I want to start a process of having conversations with folks on the porch and allowing it to be just a safe, relaxed place where people can express different views, different perspectives, different opinions. And I was like, who would I like to interview? Who would I like to know better? Who would I like to know certain elements of their life that maybe surprised me in some way? And you kept popping up as like top of the list. Act normal, Dad. The first part's the hardest.
Well, acting normal is
Not your strong suit.
no, it's not.
Basically, I want to have a conversation about life and what it's like to be a dad. We can both relate to that. What it's like to be a son. I can relate to that. You can't relate as clearly to that. You know, it's just like Chip Gaines exists. And I've got all these qualities that I got from you and Mom, but how did we get here? And I don't mean me and you on this porch right here.
Sure.
I mean you and your upbringing. Look, there's a ton that I know about my dad, but the older we both get, the more I realize there's so much I don't know about who he is and where he's come from. Without question, a big part of who I am comes from him and who he is and how he grew up. So I want to go back to the very beginning with him and figure out how he became the man he is, and maybe even how I've become the man I am.
When I was a kid, we lived in a government housing. When my mother decided to leave Dad, I was 5 years old.
Okay, so it was that early.
Yes.
Sure.
I was getting up when I was 7, 8, 9 years old and fixing my brother's breakfast and getting him ready for school when my mother was off at work.
Working 2 or 3 jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. And at that time, I was always in a fight somewhere.
Wow.
Years later, my brother said to me one day, he said, you know, the reason you did that is because you were angry. Never thought about, well, why was I angry? Well, I didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
All these other guys had fathers. But that's when I got the idea of getting out by myself, bird hunting and BB guns and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So got into that outdoorsy world kind of thing, just because I wanted to get away from the thought of, well, gosh, I don't have some of the stuff that other people have.
Sure.
And what I learned at a very young age is if you wanted something, you better go out and earn the money to go get it.
Sure.
And I used to sell Christmas cards in grit newspapers. I don't think the grit newspaper's even around anymore.
Okay.
But I used to sell those so I could accumulate enough points to go get a baseball glove. I've always been a grinder.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just go grind it out. Go make it happen. Well, that's me. My career has been pretty strange compared to a lot of different people.
You graduate from the University of Mexico,
yes.
and the very next day after graduation.
No direction, no what am I going to do, no nothing.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I did try semi-pro football for a little while and did that deal.
Okay.
But I started out managing a soda straw restaurant.
You and Mom are married.
Yep.
You've got a baby at this point or no?
Yep, have one, and you're still coming here.
Okay,
so
all right.
I remember thinking specifically, I mean, I've got this degree, and now what do I do?
Sure.
I mean, I'm really not prepared for the next phase of my life. I mean, I played football forever.
That's all you ever wanted.
And that's all I've ever wanted,
Yeah.
and now that's over. So this guy gives me this opportunity, and I go start managing that. So I was working for someone at that point, and I had this huge thing inside me that says, you know, gosh, I hate working for other people. I mean, you know, go do something on your own.
Sure.
Well, gosh, I was scared to death. I mean, how am I going to go do something? I don't have a dime. I mean, what am I going to go do? How am I going to go do something?
Back in those days, did you have, you know, they've got these game shows to where when you get in a pickle, you get to call a friend.
Yeah.
You've been that friend for me, like so many times I can't count, right? But who was the phone a friend? Were there mentors?
We had a friend of mine that kind of was my mentor and my father figure, if you will. His name was Bill Abernathy.
Yeah.
Bill and I talked quite a bit. And so when I told Bill that I had this desire to do something, he said, well, maybe we can work something out. And so after the soda straw experience, there was this Zia embroidery.
Okay.
And you're going, embroidery, wow. That doesn't sound all that exciting,
Sure.
but what they actually did was they put names on uniforms, and so it was in the
made
sports.
the patches for the letter jackets and all this. I remember that, yeah.
And I heard that this business was for sale.
You were just thinking, hey, I'm going to take this seed idea.
Right.
I like the business in theory.
Yes.
Bill's going to help me finance it,
Yeah.
and I'm going to blow this thing up, and it's something much greater
Exactly.
than it.
Bill Abernathy, who saw some things in me, was willing to take a risk, and so that's how that happened.
This is basically the argument that I'm trying to really draw out of you, is that so many of us do what our dad or our mentor, it's like we follow those footsteps and we get to this place, and then you're there. You're in the promised land.
Sure.
But as you might recognize in all of this conversation, there's been a gaping hole in the conversation as it relates to you and your upbringing. Do you choose not to talk about your dad in any way, shape, or form because you don't want to talk about it? Or do you just not have memories as it relates to him?
The only things I remember are the negative things that he wasn't, right?
Sure. They were all causing you real live, physical problems.
Yeah.
Not enough money, having to take care of your little brother and pack his lunch because you knew grandma was having to work 2 or 3 jobs because this bum's not helping out. I mean, none of this is not justifiable stuff.
Absolutely. The vow was, I'm not going to have a family that looks like the one I grew up in. They're not going to have to worry if I'm out drunk with another woman in the middle of the night. They're not going to have to worry about whether I can put food on the table and follow up and be there for them at every event, every second that they are out there. I'm going to be there for them.
Yeah.
And so I made that vow, and I've killed myself to do that, right?
Sure.
I mean,
that's where it leads me, and this is the final chapter of this time together, is just all of these experiences has made you.
Yes.
And if you take any of them out, there's probably some glitch in it.
Absolutely.
Or you're better or you're worse.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying that if you would have had a dad that in theory there wouldn't have been all these positives, because I know from my perspective, having a dad enabled all these positives. So maybe you'd have been somewhere faster.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd have gotten further. You know, who knows? But it would have taken away from who you are. And as sad as it is, and as sad as I am for you as a little boy to have to experience all those things, however that shored up in your brain, you came to a conclusion that I'm never going to do this to anybody else, kind of a thing. But on the flip side, if it were that easy, everybody'd do it.
Yes.
If everybody that didn't have a dad, all they had to do was say, well, doggone it, I'm going to not do that to my kids.
Right.
Well, why isn't that the model then?
Right,
'Cause
right.
you're the rare exception. You've made it to where you've made it. Married to mom for 50 plus years. You've been a great dad to me. That commitment you made to yourself, why did it work in your case and it doesn't work in 999,000 other cases?
And that's a great question. And you know, I've struggled with that same thing, because there's a lot of angry men out there.
Sure.
And they're angry for the same reason I was angry, right? They didn't have any kind of upbringing and the kind of role model that a father would bring into their lives. And I get that. But you either have got to decide at some point in time, I'm going to be a victim, right, the rest of my life, or I'm going to go out and I'm going to go do what it takes to get the job done for my family. I'm not going to say I was a saint. I did things that I'm ashamed of today, and I did some things that I shouldn't have done, but I'm going to do.
Your will can get you through some pretty tough things.
Exactly. Got to keep working. I got to keep grinding. I got to do something that's going to create some kind of value, and that's another one of the things that has driven me these years. Are you creating value where you are, no matter where it is? Football field, business world, your own business, are you creating some value?
Sure. The value that you've instilled in my life, think about myself in your position with no dad, no example, no chance, no money, and it's a slow, long process. And then I wake up and I'm like, man, here I am at 45, 46, and things feel like they're going all right. You feel like you've got some wind in your sails, and it's like there's no telling. There's no telling how many more decades this would have taken me had it not been for your examples. When you talk about perseverance and someone who has zero quit in them, that's my dad for sure. And as busy as he was throughout his life with his career and his hobbies and things that he enjoyed, he always was a family man through and through. And somehow all that pain and disappointment he talks about never got in the way of him being the most supportive and loving father you could ever imagine. Amen, Daddy. Thanks for coming down and shooting the bull with me, and I think it's been insightful and fun, and I appreciate you being willing to come down here and do it.
Well, I've loved it, and I just want you to know that you have exceeded my greatest expectation.